Welcome to this week's edition of Coach Prep. Coach Don and I are here in the Cherokee Batting Range podcast studio getting ready to record episode number 173. We're going to talk about coaching decisions are not made in a vacuum, how we have to consider a lot of things as we make decisions on the field. Before we talk about that topic, let's talk about our sponsors. First, the Anderson Bat Company.
Everything Fast Pitch is very proud to have Anderson Bat Company as our presenting sponsor. Anderson Bat Company is using the latest and greatest bat technology to corner the market in the fast pitch world. They have the -9 Rocket Tech, the -10 Carbon, and the -11 Carbon Light. Anderson Bat Company is using this technology to put a high-performing bat in the hands of hitters that really know the difference between a good bat and a great bat. We're also working with Anderson to provide a discount for all of our listeners. Go to the Anderson Bat Company website and order your bats. Use the EFP20 discount, which is for everything fast pitch, and you'll get a 20% discount. It's a great way for you to save a little bit of money on a great bat and also help support everything fast pitch at the same time.
Supporting everything fast pitch is a really important thing in Coach Prep for Coach Don and I. Go to patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. Become a patron. We definitely need more people to come on board and support us. It's $5, $10, or $20 a month. So if you see value in what we're doing, if you want us to be able to keep doing it past this next year, we need to make sure that we get more people to come on board. The good news is we've added a bunch of patrons this year, so we've gotten closer to breaking even.
Still need to grow.
But we continue to grow and continue to see more financial support so that we can keep this thing a-rolling. So Don, one of the things that I've always thought is crazy, ironic, funny, is the idea that somehow coaching decisions, that the things that you're doing when you're on the field, the things that you're deciding to do with your game plan or with your players is somehow cookie cutter, that there's some sort of magic system that says we always should do certain things. You know, the old, once upon a time, if you get a leadoff hitter on first, you should bunt her over to second no matter what.
Always bunt, yeah.
The different things about, always sending a runner with 2 outs, always, switching pitchers if the other team, starts to get a handle on it, calling for that bunt even, no matter what the situation is. And what I want us to talk about briefly today is just that all of those decisions, as a coach is making them, and for all of our coaching friends, that as you're sorting this stuff out, we have a choice. We can try to make it this systematic assembly line, cookie cutter kind of a thing, where we always do a certain thing in a certain situation. Or I think the option that I'm going to suggest and that I started to try to choose more and more as my career got more and more developed was seeing the bigger picture of everything that factors into the decision you're about to make and making sure that you're weighing all those different things to make sure that you're making better choices and choices that probably are going to be more successful for your team.
Tori, that totally makes sense to me, and I'm on board with you. But if I get a runner on first base and everybody expects that I'm just going to bunt, first of all, I'm predictable,
right?
But also too, when I don't, and everybody in the stands thinks that I'm supposed to, I'm not really going to be looked at very highly, right?
Right.
And especially when it doesn't go
right.
When I have a hunch, I might know that particular player had a terrible time trying to bunt in warm-ups today.
Yep.
To your point, and you kind of have to go with the flow and have some insight as to what might be most effective at that point. The defense of the team we're playing against is amazing fielding bunts.
Yep.
So I felt like maybe we should hit. But again, we've set ourselves up for a little criticism.
Right. Well, and one of the things that we have to always think about from a coach's perspective, every decision you make is going to be judged by the outcome of the result of the play.
It's so true. Well,
not the logic or the thought process that went into it. So
they get to sit back and
We'll just use the one we've already talked about. So we got a runner at first with nobody out. So if you call for the bunt and your really bad bunter pops it up, then people are
She's a really bad bunter.
Yeah, why did you have her bunt? She's the worst bunter on the team.
Everybody knows.
Right. Or if the power hitter that, is just as likely to hit a 2-run home run hits a lazy fly ball and it gets caught and the runner doesn't advance. Well, if you would have bunted there, at least we would have gotten her over to second base. Well, the reality of it is every player's got strengths and weaknesses. Every situation has different pressure attached to it. Every possible decision that you're going to make as a coach has way more factors than that's how we do things mentality that sometimes I think we apply. And so, making sure that we're looking at the whole picture, and again, Don, you touched on it. So we've got a runner at first. It's the tying run. It's the bottom of the 13th inning. And while logic might say, hey, let's bunt her over to try to get a runner into scoring position to see if we can tie the game, there's also a lot of factors that could factor into it. If it's your number 3 or number 4 hitter, and they are really strong and having a great day at the plate, the other team's probably happy if you have her bunt.
Sure.
In those situations, I think we have to weigh all those different positives, negatives, potentials. And one of the things I think that has to always be factored into is, what are our players good at? What do they feel more comfortable doing? And then in some regard,
the instinct of
right.
Yeah.
And the weighing in your mind, the risk versus the reward, right? So if I have my very best hitter bunt, then even if she's successful,
took the bat out of her hands.
Right. And now I'm counting on my second or third or fourth or fifth or sixth or seventh best hitter to try to get a hit to score her from second.
Right.
Versus my very best hitter having a chance to hit a double so she can score from first, or a home run and we walk it off and we win.
Right.
And I always laugh about this. There was early on in my coaching career at Tennessee Tech, I had a couple of parents that I really became close friends with, parents of players that I coached. And, the one mom was you should always bunt her over to second, bunt her into scoring position, something good could happen. And she and I would have these friendly little discussions over and over and over again. And, eventually it got to the point where she knew I was going to do whatever I thought was right at that time. And most of the time it was going to be different than what she thought.
A little against the grain.
Different than what she thought. But over time, I think what ended up happening is she started to see more and more that there were times that the best hitter really does need to hit instead of bunt. Your best pitcher who's a little bit tired really needs to stay in the game and figure out how to, to dig a little bit deeper and battle through a tough situation. Sometimes you have to send a runner in a shaky situation because you want to try to, put more pressure on the defense or
force a fault.
Right, yeah. Or another, really simple situation. If you have 2 outs and you have a runner at second base, if you get a base hit, chances are you should, at least in my estimation, be thinking about that runner should be scoring on a base hit from second base. Because with 2 outs, she should be getting a good jump.
Yeah.
She should be expecting to go as soon as the ball gets contacted, because no matter what happens, as soon as it gets hit, either the inning's going to go on or the inning's going to end. And she isn't going to be the one that does either one of those things. And she should be getting a good jump expecting to score, because with 2 outs, my mindset as a third base coach should be, hey, we got to try to get this run in. Well, if she gets thrown out by 20 feet, you look bad for sending her, but let's weigh out what some of the possibilities that could have influenced why did you send her. Have a really weaker or struggling hitter on deck.
Yeah.
So I should stop a runner at third, hoping that somebody who's really having a bad day or a bad week or a bad career
is going to change it
is
around.
going to somehow get the one hit we need. And so it's just one of those things that in hindsight, if you get somebody thrown out by 20 feet, you look like a bad third base coach. But everything about the reason why you sent that runner
was completely correct
and logical and makes sense. But in the hindsight of in a vacuum view, well, she got thrown out. The inning's over. Well, so she could have been standing at third base while the next girl came up to bat. Maybe something good happens. Maybe something good doesn't happen. But there's a lot of factors that are in play. And I think we have to give the coaching side of it a little bit more thought sometimes and a little bit more awareness, just to make sure that we're not always following a certain set of guidelines. As you said, Don, being a really predictable team, I think, can be as problematic as being an inconsistent team.
No doubt. And that playing against somebody that's very predictable is kind of exciting. You know what to expect, you know what to plan for, and you can decode that pretty quick.
Right. And the teams I always hated playing against the most was the show bunt hit in a situation, the delayed steal, the fake bunt hit away, the taking an extra base when it didn't seem like it was the logical thing to do, that really put a lot of extra pressure on you to react to what they were doing and to be able to keep up with what they were doing.
Yep.
And so to me, I think that it's important that we're always thinking about coaching in that way, that there's a lot of factors, there's a lot of things, potential influencers in the decisions you're going to make, and think it through, have a plan. Make sure that you're sharing your philosophy with your team so that they're aware of what your thinking is. If you're likely to send a runner from second with 2 outs, We want the players to be really aware of it, because otherwise, somebody who's a slower runner might be jogging from second to third, thinking, well, he's going to stop me at third.
And I was going to say, and to try and get away from being shy of the criticism from others, to chat about this in the preseason talks with the parents too.
Yeah.
Because again, you don't want them wondering and worrying, and to have them on board and be supportive of your hunches, the selection you're making and the choices you're making during the game, for them to be supportive of it is very comforting as a coach.
Right. Well, and that example, Don, is a really important piece of this. So if my daughter gets thrown out by 30 feet to end the game, and she's a dead duck at home plate, and the other team, gets her out, and she's the last out of the game, and we lose. If my daughter's upset and she gets in the car, and my first response is, well, your coach is an idiot. He should have never sent you with 2 outs in the bottom of the 7th inning. That was really, really stupid coaching. Nothing good's coming from that.
Not a chance.
But if the parent is aware enough to be able to, and has heard from the coach and seen the coach in action, and knows that the coach has really thought this through, and says, well, you were out this time, but understand this is why he sent you. This is why he thought it was a good idea, and it didn't work out this time. But if that girl throws that ball halfway up the backstop, guess what? You score, and somebody else is in scoring position, and maybe we win that game.
And we win, right?
And so just
which is more productive,
right?
Yeah.
And one has a chance to lead to bigger success on down the road, and one's going to be a total pain, and everybody's behind.
Well, and I think that's what we are trying to safeguard against in all of our conversations, is trying to create a good environment for the kids to be successful.
Right. So coaches, think it through. Make sure you've got an idea of why you're doing what you're doing, what the reasoning is. Make sure that you're aware enough about what's going on with your players, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, that we can kind of play to those strengths as much as we possibly can. Make sure that we're aware enough about what's going on that we can help our players understand what we're trying to get done. And let's try to make this as open a book as we possibly can, so that instead of creating conflict and problems and issues on down the road, we can have a little bit more of a supportive and dynamic situation where everybody's on the same page.
I was gonna say, this is just all of this is just coaching, right?
Yeah, Coaching 101.
I love it.
-1 million.
Good stuff.
All right, so that's going to wrap up episode number 173. As always, please support Anderson Bat Company, EFP20. Save that 20% and support us at the same time. Go to patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. Become a patron. Also go to the fastpitchprep.com website. Order your Square Cuts training discs there. They're $49.95 a dozen. And as always, if you have questions, comments, ideas, or suggestions, reach out to Coach Don or I at everythingfastpitch@gmail.com or fastpitchprep@gmail.com. We would love to talk about stuff that you're interested in. So for Coach Don McKinley and our producer Stan Lewis, this is Coach Torrey saying thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again next week.